So welcome to the meeting, the Audit Committee meeting. I think this is the last one of this financial year. So, gosh, that year has flown. Members of the committee and officers are present here at Civic, and I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves shortly. Committee meetings such as this are generally no longer being live streamed, and this evening's meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Council's YouTube channel as soon as possible after the meeting. To ensure the clarity of the recording, can I ask everyone speaking to first turn their microphone on and also speak clearly into it in order to ensure your contributions are fully captured. We are not expecting a fire alarm, but after the day I've had, I wouldn't be surprised if we got one. So in the event that alarm sounds, please exit the building by the nearest marked exit and assemble outside as indicated by officers. Before we begin, I'll ask committee members and others present to briefly introduce themselves. So I'm Hannah O'Neill, I'm Councillor for West Bletchley and Bletchley West, and I chair this committee. Steve.
Good evening, my name's Steve Richardson, I'm the Director of Finance and Resources.
Good evening, I'm Anna Rolton, Assistant Director of Finance.
Good evening, Vicky Yarrington, Senior Finance Manager.
Good evening, Alex Marlin, Operations Manager for Revenues and Benefits.
Hello, Mary Swanston, Revenues and Benefits Service Delivery Manager.
Martin Pesci, I'm a councillor on the committee.
Peter Cannon, member for Shellybrook End Ward and a member of the committee.
Good evening, Ebukai Mebina, independent member of the committee.
Good evening, David Fletcher, independent member.
Councillor Wakas Ahmed, member of this committee.
Darren Kendrick, Central Milton Keynes Ward, substituting for Victoria Bamashili, Stansbury.
Good evening, Uri Clark, Broughton Ward, one of the vice for this committee.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Chris Wardle, Councillor for Newport Pagnell North and Hanslope Ward and Vice Chair of this committee.
Good evening, David Lamb, Audit Manager.
Evening all, Alex Melia, Senior Governance and Scrutiny Officer.
Thank you, everybody. And now to those online.
Thank you, everybody. Yes, I'm Duncan Laird. I'm Director from KPMG, the Council's Engagement Lead for the External Audit. With me, who I wasn't expecting because it's way past their bedtime, is Arpit Saraf, who's the Senior Manager on the audit, and Shubi Goyal, who started out as the Assistant Manager, but actually halfway through the audit did get promoted to Manager. So they've been instrumental on delivering the external audit with me over the last year.
Thank you so much. And welcome to Abuka. It's lovely to have you here. I'm sorry I wasn't here to welcome you. That's terrible. But thank you ever so much for joining us. And you're our new independent member. And you're joining us for the first time this evening. And I think as somebody who's only been on this committee for 2 years, I would strongly suggest that no question is a stupid question. So please feel free to ask any questions. But I'm sure your knowledge is much greater than mine.
Thank you.
Okay, so participation and rules of debate. I will now describe for the benefit of all how we will conduct the meeting tonight. For each item, the lead officer will introduce the item. I will then invite any members of the public who have registered or any ward councillors who are present to speak. I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions or contribute to the debate. Once all contributions have been made, I will sum up and take a vote or seek agreement on any recommendations. I would ask that all participants to keep their contributions to their allocated time of 3 minutes. And those that know me know that I'm quite strict on that. And if you're remote, to switch off your video feed and speak only when invited to do so by the chair. We'll now proceed to the committee business. So apologies. Alex, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair. So apologies from Councillor Bamashili, substituted by Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you. And disclosures of interest. So item 3 is disclosure of interest. Councillors to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or other registerable interests or non-registerable interests, including other pecuniary interests that they may have in the business to be transacted, and officers to declare any interests they may have in the contract to be considered. Any interests? No. I should just say that at the beginning. I think we all know that rather than try and kind of get around it. Okay, so we've got minutes to approve from the meeting held on the 27th of November. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes? No. So we'll mark them as agreed and I'll sign those a bit later. And Alex, have we received any public questions?
Thanks, Chair. No questions were received.
Okay, so we'll move on to external audit housing benefit subsidy report. Mary and Alex are going to introduce this for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to summarise the housing benefit subsidy audit report for 24-25. Every year we are audited by, this year it's BDO, on behalf of the Department for Work and Pensions, to ensure that any error in our housing benefit caseload is at an acceptable level. I'm pleased to say that for 24-25, we passed our audit. Our LA error was at 0.22%, with the acceptable level being 0.48% of our housing benefit expenditure for the year. And therefore the council has not had any reduction made to its subsidy claim. I'm also pleased to report that the 0.22% LA error percentage was an improvement on the LA error percentage for 23-24, which was at 0.27%. And I would welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee? We haven't got anyone to speak on this item, have we? No. You're Councillor Clark.
No question really, but just to highlight the fact that I've sort of read this and I was quite impressed really, and it's just quite positive to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll pass those comments to the team as well.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other comments, I mean, I would just second what Councillor Clark said. I thought this was a really impressive outcome. So the decision that we've been asked to look at this evening is that the HBAP headline 24-25 outcome be noted. So are we agreed? Yeah. Okay, so next we're going to the ISA 260 report, and it's to receive an update from our external auditors on the ISA 260 report. Duncan, can you introduce this report for us, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really sorry I can't be there with you this evening, but childcare logistics really got in the way, because this is a really exciting time for me. Not only is this actually going to be the first ever audit opinion that I sign in my name, but it is also going to be a modified audit opinion as opposed to a disclaimed audit opinion, which is a huge step forward in helping get back to what most of us would consider to be a much more normal audit environment. And that's been the result of a huge amount of effort from the finance team working with us to go back and do work over the year in 22-23 where no audit work was performed at all, and rebuild that assurance to be able to help us move away from this scenario of disclaimed audit opinions and move to a modified, which then helps us move, hopefully, next year to a clean audit opinion again. You are probably one of only a dozen of KPMG's audit clients who will be able to take that step. Most are still, if they were disclaimed before, they will be disclaimed again this year, and there will have to be more work done in the future to move away from that. So that's really exciting for me, and a huge testament to the work that that your council and the finance team in particular have put in over the last few months. This ISA 260 report that we've got for you today is an update really on the one that we brought to November. So it goes through the significant risks that we highlighted in our audit plan that we're going to focus a lot of audit work on. Most of that is around the big judgmental numbers, so things like the valuation of land and buildings, focusing particularly on the waste recovery park, the valuation of investment property, which is held by MKDP, management override controls, which is a standard audit risk for all auditors, and the pensions valuation numbers as well, which again, very large numbers, quite judgmental, require a lot of input from experts and the assumptions that go into that. But I'm really pleased to say there's since the report that we presented in November, there's no real additional findings. So the audit adjustments that we recorded then are the same ones that we recorded now. A couple of additional ones around some disclosures, minor disclosures. We did identify and have raised for consideration a control recommendation around the declarations of declarations of interest process. because actually when we did some checks, there were some declarations that hadn't been received, and then when we went to some Companies House, we were able to identify some directorships that the council should have been made aware of. No indication that there are any related parties that haven't been disclosed that should be disclosed, but there's still a process level thing there that does, in our opinion, need to be improved. The report also confirms, which again was in our annual auditor's report that reported in November, that the value for money work was completed with no issues identified. So we're giving a clean value for money opinion alongside our modified opinion on the financial statements. There are also some required communications we need to give about confirming our independence and the audit fee for the work. You'll notice that there are some fee variations noted that will need approval from PSA around the additional work that we have done this year, mainly around the building back assurance, which is a one-off cost for those additional pieces of work over the 22-23 numbers. But it's overall a very positive report. I'm really pleased to be able to bring this to you, and it sets a really great platform for moving to the future years and back to a clean audit opinion again. But I'm happy to pause there and take any questions on the report.
Thank you. Steve, did you or your team want to add anything to that before we take comments from the committee?
I think I just add that I know an awful lot of work's gone in from members of the finance team. Vicky particularly has worked really hard on this along with her team, and also Duncan and his team as well. So I'm just grateful for the work that's been put in to get us to this position, which I think, as Duncan has said, is the best outcome that we could achieve in the circumstances for this year's audit. So hopefully for 25-26 we will be back, all being well, back to a normal audit opinion.
Thank you. Okay, comments from the committee. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to echo Steve's sentiments there, well done to the finance team for everything you've done on this, and thank you to KPMG for everything you've done to improve our audit opinion as well. It's great to see that we've got a modified audit opinion this year, and hopefully we're not that far away from recording an unqualified opinion in the future. So thank you for all your efforts and your work. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, on the fees, I noticed the fee variation for ISA 600 shows TBC at the moment, and I understand that they are all subject to PSAA approval. Do we know whenabouts that approval will happen? And is there anything in the budget specifically to make sure that any variations for the ISA 600 that are not known yet will be covered? And the other question is just to kind of get some clarification, some just further comment on the audit adjustments that have been made. I know all of them are related to investment property and asset valuations, which are conducted by an independent valuer performed by the council. So I just want to just seek a little bit of further clarification on that point. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. So the PSAA, who are the body who sets audit fees and approve any variations to that, have a regular process whereby they will receive variation requests from auditors and make an assessment as to whether they deem that to be reasonable based on their understanding of what work has been undertaken. So it can sometimes take a little bit of time if they request additional explanation from us over exactly what work we have undertaken to justify the number of hours that we are putting in, but usually that will be done within a few weeks. In terms of budget, my understanding was that particularly around the building back assurance work, additional money was made available by central government to help fund councils who were going to be charged extra from their auditors for going back and doing work in previous years. So I would expect that to be covered by central government funding made available to the council rather than have to come out of your own internal budgets. In terms of the audit adjustments around valuations, a lot of that, to be honest, was a timing difference. So there was an expectation that some of the properties were going to be sold, but actually at year end, that sale hadn't taken place yet. So we're still held on the council's books and needed to then have a value put against them. And that's most of them. The others are kind of linked to the fact that because you do a rolling valuation program, there will always be a period where some assets haven't been valued for a few years, and actually if you take an assessment as to what their value would be at the current date, there is often an uplift that you need to do to bring those assets to a current value. So there isn't anything that indicates that there's been mistakes being made in the actual valuation process, and the valuers that you use, we are happy that they know the market, they know how to do a valuation, they understand the way to value it. It's mainly just a data input issue, or in this case, mostly a timing issue.
Thank you. Councillor Ward, do you want to come back on anything there?
No, thank you. That was very clearly stated.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Councillor Clark.
Just a quick one. Could you expand a bit on you mentioned about the data, is it data declaration of interest? Apologies, I'm thinking something else. Could you possibly expand on that as to, is it more based around senior management, or is it on staff level? Where did that come from in terms of the process you highlight that there was some concerns?
So we take a view as to how low down does the council need to get a declaration of interest from. Clearly, if people are not in a decision-making role and don't have any sort of role in deciding who to award contracts to or who to make payments to, there's no real need to get a declaration of them. So I'll have to go back and check exactly which people these related to, so I can work out whether they are councillors or staff members, unless Shubi and Arpit can remember off the top of their head. But there would be people that we would expect to make a declaration because they are in a position to make decision making that could influence where payments were made to. And when we did a cross check to kind of search their name against the company's house register, we did identify that they were actually holding directorships in other places. So it's likely to, on that case, it's likely to be councillors, I would have thought, rather than officers who are unlikely to have time to be directors of companies. But I can double check exactly who that related to.
Thank you, Councillor. Have you got any? Did you want to ask anything else? No. Yeah, I mean, very similar. My question was that many to the team in terms of what we're going to put in place to try and rectify some of that. I think as councillors, declarations of interest always gets a bit tetchy, so kind of making sure we're kind of doing everything we need to there would be really useful.
Yeah, so we are aware of the issue and we will pick it up as part of the 25-26 accounts. We will make sure we will do the cross check back to Companies House like the auditors have done. So this should be prevented going forward.
Thank you ever so much. Any other comments on this item? No? Okay, in that case, so the recommendation was to that the Audit Committee receive and comment on the ISA 260 report and the management representation letter, and that the revised statement of draft accounts for 24-25 be noted. So are we happy to agree those? Yeah, okay. Moving on then, we're going to move to internal audit and counter fraud. Jacinta, you're going to introduce this for us. Hopefully your microphone's working now.
Right, is this okay? Can you all hear me? Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think we're starting with the progress update. This is going to be in 3 parts, Chair and committee. So I will talk on the internal audit, and then David will pick up on the counter fraud report, and we can just touch on the actions tracker if that's okay. In terms of internal audit progress, It's a routine report that comes to committee to enable you guys to meet your monitoring of the work that internal audit does. The report, obviously, it's a point in time report. So the report we've got here goes up to 30th of January, taking it from the last time that we presented, which I think was end of September. And it's a view of progress against the plan that was approved back in February this time last year. So we've been working on that. Just to make committee aware that since this report was produced, we have actually progressed with 5 more audits that have gone to draft stage, which will not be reflected in the pack. Just to note, I think it's I'll start with page 64 of the pack. That we've had quite steady progress this year, I'm happy to say. Combination of outputs from 3 really brilliant trainees that we've had in, as well as we've got the framework contract off the ground. So that combination of those 2 sort of packages have really been helpful in moving the plan forward to the extent where I'm going to say to committee, I'm cautiously hopeful that we will approach 75–80% of the plan by the end of March, which I think our target is 80. Cautiously, I say. Hopefully, by the time I come back in July, stop smiling, we might be at 80%, but we'll see. Just moving to page 65, that table there kind of shows that 93% of audits that we've completed this year, the opinion is either good or satisfactory. 2 audits where we had a limited assurance, but that's 2 out of 27. So I think overall controls are working quite well. Committee has had sight of this report because we share the report with committee members as they come up. I suppose as with previous years, committee we bring some changes to the plan. So on section 3.1, which I think is page 66 in the pack, we've listed some areas where we're taking some audits out of the plan and a brief reason as to why we are amending the plan. And hopefully committee will have a look and accept that. We're also reporting, I've also included at 3.2 some whistleblowing work that we've been doing, which does impact on how much of the plan we can actually deliver during the year. We've had quite a few this year, much more than usual, I would suggest. I'm not quite sure why, but we've had quite a number of whistleblowing referrals this year. I think I will leave it at that, to be honest with you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions on the progress update for internal audit.
Any questions? Councillor Cannon?
Are you happy that we've got sufficient resources in place to get to at least 75–80% completion by the end of the year?
Current progress and current workload of the team, yes. Yes. As I say, we've been fairly lucky to get 3 graduate trainees they've hit the ground running, even though it's like the first time they're working in audit. So I'm cautiously confident, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hi, Jatinder. Is the 75–80% or the 10–20% that you hope to achieve, is that pretty standard across internal audit teams across the rest of the sort of council population?
Yes, but then I would also say not all councils do annual plans as such, because the new standards allow you to do quarterly plans, rolling plans, but generally 75% to between 75 and say 90% is the norm in the sector, yes.
Okay. And then just as a follow-up on that, how do you prioritise which ones are going to slip?
It's a combination of things, to be honest. First of all, we would look at the risk. We would also consider what other assurances around that area in terms of what work management or the organisation are doing at the moment. But also that sometimes it's a matter of timing. So even if an area is considered really high risk, but the service or the team cannot really accommodate us, then we might have to defer that audit. So, for example, with the housing inspections that we've had in January, the team have had to be doing preparation to accommodate the housing inspector. So we've had to, even though some of the housing audits we would have wanted to do, we've had to accept that those audits either need to be deferred or slipped because they can't accommodate us at the same time as say the housing inspector. And there are sort of issues like that. We've had instances where the service has been really involved in a really big contract, and it would have been quite an ask for the team to accommodate an internal audit, as well as being focused on delivering, a big audit. And the risk there is the contract rather than doing the audit. So yes, so it's a variety of reasons.
Okay. And then again, sorry, another one is that ultimately, I guess you have to satisfy yourself when you come to give your opinion against the plan, whether you've had sufficient coverage to be able to give the opinion that you give. So, because I remember the conversation this time last year, again, I forget what the percentage of achievement was, but it was below what you were hoping for.
Yeah.
So I guess that doesn't compromise your ability from in material terms to be able to give the sign off that is hopeful.
Even though the sign off is primarily based on the work done by the audit team, we do have to consider and take into consideration other assurance pieces of work and management assurances as well. So we put all that in as a whole in arriving at the opinion. So yeah, when I do give the opinion, I'm fairly comfortable that I can demonstrate why that opinion is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Wardle.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question regarding the table on page 64. I note that out of the 24-25 outstanding audits that were brought forward, there are 4 that are not started as at 31st of January 2026. Can I ask which audits do they relate to, and why they've not yet been looked at?
So starting from page 72 is a list of some of the audits brought forward. So the four audits that have brought forward would be the 4 that are sort of being carried forward on page 73 and the one not allocated. The housing data information management one was deferred because the service were doing some work on data management across the authority. Schools heating system replacement project. I think we've just pushed that one back, not for any particular reason, I would say, Councillor, but it is going to be done. And the other one is the academy transition arrangements, schools of concern. I know I've put it in as struggling schools, but schools where we have concern. We've put that one to one side for now because we are doing a lot of work on schools in terms of delivering the financial review of schools generally. But again, that's an audit that we will be picking up. Yeah.
Thank you, Jacinda. So it sounds like you're comfortable that those 4 audits will happen eventually. It's just they're just being deferred and that they're not going to fall off the list. Perfect. Thank you.
No. So Jacinda, I've got a couple of questions. I hope that's okay. And I apologise because I find this area really interesting, and it's been a bit of a journey for you, and I'm delighted that you feel you're in a much better place. So the first question I had was on those those ones that were brought forward, the 24-25. Obviously, a lot of them are in field work. A few of them are in field work. Are we sort of sure we're going to have them finished by the end of the year? And then we have and this it might be over two reports, but there was a a paragraph that said we expect 10 to 20% will be carried forward. And I want to understand really why we do that, why we don't just say, actually, this is the amount we can handle a year, rather than almost setting ourselves up to just not be able to reach that target. It just seems like I don't understand why we're not just managing that resource of saying this is what we can do, this is how we're going to do it, rather than saying, well, actually we expect we're just not going to get through it all, because that just feels, again, it feels like it's kind of setting yourselves up to fail, but also I can't imagine that's kind of good morale for the team, like knowing already they're not going to hit their targets.
Well, we set the target at 80%. This year we are trying to do just that, Chair, in the sense that I've included all of the brought forward stuff as part of the audit plan. So hopefully the target, I think that the sector norm is not to achieve, even though you set the plan because you're thinking that you need to do all of that work to support the opinion, as David said. The norm is for 90% maximum, because there will always be other things that the team needs to do, which will impact on the plan. And because of changes within the plan, even if we said 100%, it's highly likely that we would not aim for 100%, but will not achieve the 100%. But we are trying to get to a stage where the plan should reflect the work that we think we can deliver. So if you notice, when I come to do the plan for next year, I have incorporated the brought forward audits within the plan, whereas I think previous years I've had brought forward as a little pack, and then I've got a whole host of new audits, which is, as you say, we're setting ourselves up for a fall. But hopefully for next year, I've not put lots of new audits in. I've just reflected audits that we carry forward. So we're trying to do a rolling plan, but still set ourselves a target.
Okay, that makes sense. I suppose it throws out another question though in terms of resource. Obviously, we've spent a long time trying to get you guys up to resource. Do you think now you have got the resource? Bearing in mind you just said that there's always stuff that comes up and you still can't get to everything.
Yeah.
Do you think you've got the full resource to? I think this is such an important area in terms of kind of highlighting issues that might be coming down the track for the council.
Yeah. We could always do with more resource, but the situation of the council at the moment is that, you know, we have to manage with what we've got. Okay. But it's a lot. I think what I would say to committee is that we're in a lot of better position than we've been for a couple of years. Yeah. And when these trainees finish their training, they'll be even performing at a higher level. But yeah, definitely in a much better place. I feel happier with the resource we've got at the moment, but we could always do with more, definitely.
Thank you. Councillor Cannon.
And David's just reminded me, we have got a framework contract as well with an external company who will assist us with that. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I've been on the audit committee for a number of years, and I think it always surprises people when they join the committee that it's this kind of 80% target. But it's important that we have a lot left to do, because we don't want to get to March and then have nothing planned. Yeah, so with all the other work that comes in, that has to be reactive. It's important that we've got a pipeline of work when the resource is available.
Okay. I just wanted to ask Jacinta around the audit planning. To what extent is it risk-based?
We'll come to that later when I do the audit plan. I think it's on here as an item, but yeah, it is risk-based.
Thank you. I did have another question about the management action report. Well, it was more of a statement, really. It's brilliant to see so many of them being completed and completed on time. That was brilliant. I think the only question I had was, I don't know if I'll even be able to. Was to do with the structures inspections. The target dates were October 24. There is obviously work going on, but just considering the structures and inspections, that the council isn't at any risk in terms of, like, the work is happening even if they haven't quite met the target they wanted to. Okay, it's only the first part of your report, isn't it? We're going to do counter fraud next before I do the
Yeah.
summary. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. There's no other
Very good.
questions on this section, is there? No.
Okay. So I will be highlighting the key points of Annex B counter fraud update, which starts on page 79. Section 1 is a stand-in section that explains the work of the team. The reporting period that this covers is 1st of September 2025 to 31st of January of this year. Section 2 covers the reactive work of the team, and reactive work is the assessment and investigation of referrals received either from the general public or council officers. Sort of, if I highlight the table over the page on page 81, that lists the outcomes of investigations completed during the period. The majority of savings were from the removal of council tax single persons discount and council tax reduction, and one housing application was rejected due to false information identified during the investigation. And then section 2.5, which is page 82, National Anti-Fraud Network alerts. I suppose the items to highlight there are 2.5.4, where we received an alert from NAFIN on suspected crisis loan fraud, crisis payment frauds. And we sent that to our revenues and benefits team. And they confirmed that they had one payment had been made to the fraudster, but they'd become suspicious and declined subsequent applications, and they did what the alert requested, which was to contact the council that was leading the investigation, because this crisis loan fraudster had been obtaining payments from a number of local authorities. 2.5.5 references that we have the council was subjected to a business rate fraud related to refunds, where a fraudster posed as an agent for a legitimate company and requested refunds of business rates, which were paid. The fraud was reported to Action Fraud, who in turn have passed it on to North Wales Police for possible investigation. And the Wales connection is that the agent was based in Wales. Section 3 on page 83 documents the proactive work of the team, and in particular what I should highlight is the 3.1.2 is the development of a draft corporate fraud risk register. The purpose of this is to ensure that we have mapped the council's key fraud risk, evaluated the controls in place, and identify areas for improvement. This risk register is still work in progress. Part of the reason for doing this is that the council is now subject to the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, which penalises the failure to prevent fraud for an organisation. And then the other proactive work, 3.1.3, is that we undertook some counter-fraud risk workshops with the management teams in both children's and adult services. And finally, section 4, National Fraud Initiative, the table on page 84
lists the work to date on the current exercise, which has generated a total saving of £189,728. The exercise is 2 yearly, and we expect to get notification in April or May of the data that is required by NFI to be uploaded in September. We'll then get another set of matches just before Christmas if it holds to previous timetables. And NFI have indicated that they will expand the number of adult social care data sets being requested. So that was my.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work. It's a really, really interesting report, as always. And clearly, the work is brilliant and benefiting the council. Any comments from the committee? No. No? Okay. Well, thank you for the work. It's hasn't even asked got any questions, so it must be doing a good job. Okay, so the recommendations for this item was that the committee notes and provides feedback as necessary on progress against the internal audit plan, counter fraud activities and outcomes, and implementation of the internal audit recommendations as documented in the action tracker Annex C. Are we happy with those? There's no other recommendations, are there? I've not noted anything down. So in that case, we'll move to the internal audit plan for 26-27. Jacinta, it's back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the plan, the details of the plan, before I start telling you how we put it together, obviously documented on starting page 113, which gives you the sort of audit area and a brief scope of what we're proposing to cover or give assurance on. So that's the list. This is the list of audits that we are going to be doing starting from April 2026. I think as David highlighted, it is designed to inform the annual internal audit opinion, and that in turn feeds into the annual governance statement. What I would say is we do make every effort with the plan to ensure that assurance is sort of provided on key areas across the council. We do take into account strategic risks, service risks, and we would also look at areas where audit hasn't touched for a while. So there might be some areas that are highlighted as low risk, and that's fine because it might be an area that we've not looked at for a little while. It might not be a high risk area, but if you don't look, if you don't shine the light on something, you might never know that anything is going on in that area. So as detailed in the report, it's quite a robust assessment process that we apply in determining the audit plan. We take feedback from management. So Steve and his other directors have had quite a lot of harassment from me as to, here's the plan, what do you think? Can I have feedback? And this, I guess, is an opportunity for audit committee to look through this and also give us some feedback, whether it's sort of introducing a new area or questioning why something is in the plan. It's an opportunity. So we get management feedback, we get your feedback before we take this forward. So just to walk you briefly through the plan, page 106 is where I've sort of 106, 107, a comment about the resources, and I think it's an improving picture. As a service, we work to the global internal audit standards, and again, we have to demonstrate compliance with that. So our self-assessment did come to committee back in November, and we have got an action plan, which I know is coming in July, fingers crossed, where we've implemented as many of them as we can. So we are required to make a comment as to how we are abiding by that, by the standards. Page 108 just gives you, I'll take you to the consultation map. It shows you how we put that plan together and the areas that we look at before arriving at the sort of the plan. So it shows you, we'll look at the strategic registers, we talk to directors, we look at service registers. We also just look at some of the information that's out there about Milton Keynes specifically and councils generally. I think what David likes to do always is do benchmarking. So we will pull quite a few plans from everywhere else. And if, I don't know, committee meetings happen to be on 5 of them, you can guarantee that committee meetings will probably be in our plan. So we do that kind of benchmarking exercise as well. I think as the independent member did ask, we try and map what we put in the plan to the strategic risk. And that's what I think I'm trying to show on page 112. Page 110, the table in there just gives you the groupings of the areas that we break, that gives, and then at the back we sort of go into a detail. So if you can see, we cover all this. There's some date allocated to finance and resources, some time allocated to adult social care, public health, children's services. So we do try and touch on every area across the council, at least every directorate, or we plan to. We don't always do all of the work during the year. Finance, obviously, we try very hard to audit some finance areas, because external audit will always ask us and chase us for what financial audits have you done to get assurance on that. I think it's important also, as I said before, that the plan remains flexible throughout the year. So there will be changes that I bring to committee to say we want to put this in, we want to take this out with reasons. So even though the plan here is being approved today or agreed today, it will not remain static. And again, that's a general sector thing, and that's what the standards also encourage as well, that we don't have static plans. It's constantly changing. The plan is obviously draft, but after today we will convert that to an accepted and approved plan. And the other thing that I've put in this year's plan, apart from obviously, as I said, listing brought forward audits and clarifying them as part of the plan, you'll also notice, wherever the plan is, that we've got what I've labelled as cross-cutting audits, where we're taking specific policies for the council, and rather than focusing on one directorate, we will look across directorates. So I think one of the areas, for example, is conflict of interest, how we manage that. So there's a corporate policy. So we'll just look at how that policy is applied across different directorates. We're looking at staff expenses. Again, there's a guidance as to how staff expenses should be managed. So we've got several audits that are couched as cross-cutting audits, where we will be looking across board. That's me done, Chair. So I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you ever so much. Any questions or comments from the committee? No? David.
Yeah, Jatinder, whether it's true or not, I was just reading about the number of councils who are signalling sort of financial distress and potential Section 114 notices, are likely or being considered. So clearly it's a very difficult environment, and again, my perception is it's probably more difficult now than it was this time last year. So in that context, how, and this is more sort of focused in on the financial risks, how do you and Steve kind of determine that you've got the right reviews going on? This probably cuts into the risk management piece as well, but fundamentally, how between you, how are you with the obvious difficulties that others are getting themselves into? I mean, is it just sort of steady as she goes? Because we're fortunate here in Milton Keynes that that we're not subject to the same problems that these other ones are. Or to what extent have you had to think differently to to ensure that we keep ahead of the curve on some of the problems that other councils are experiencing?
think that question's probably more in my court than Jacinta's, but I mean, Jacinta can certainly add to anything that I might say. So in terms of the context, you're right. There are about, I think it's 37 councils have got something called exceptional financial support for next year, which effectively means they've gone to the government and have asked permission to borrow money for day-to-day spending, which technically you can't normally do. So the fact that a council's in that position is a clear sign of financial distress. The issues in local government finance are a little bit more complicated than just looking at, say, a company and saying if a company's in distress or not, because there are different elements to our budget. So the main budget is the general fund budget, which is funded through council tax and through core government grant. And that area is where most councils find themselves struggling financially. And that's largely down to things like demand pressures, particularly around social care, homelessness, as well as funding issues. In addition to that, we also have two other revenue budgets. So we have the schools budget, and there's a particular issue in the country on the high needs block, which is for SEND. About 2/3 of councils are in deficit on SEND at the moment. There was a very big announcement the other week where the government are now going to effectively fund 90% of the historic deficit of those councils that hold a deficit. And that runs into about 4 to 5 billion across councils in terms of deficits. And some of those councils are technically insolvent in normal accounting terms, but for a statutory override, which means they can effectively ignore that deficit. We are not in that position. We still, at this moment, are in surplus, although only just, but we are expecting to head into a deficit position next year. I'll explain that in a minute. And then obviously we've got the housing revenue account for our tenants, which is funded separately through rents. And then we've also got a capital programme as well. So we've got a number of different budgets. So it's a slightly more complicated picture. As far as the council's concerned, part of my responsibility is to issue a Section 25 statement with the budget. So when the council approved the budget last week, there's a statement in the budget report to full council, which is my assessment of where the council's financial position is and any particular risks that members need to be mindful of when agreeing the budget. And that's a public document that anyone can have access to. So you'll see my assessment in there. You'll also see as part of the budget papers a risk assessment around all of the main issues in the budget that are, in my opinion, a material risk to the council. And those are all assessed, as is the way that we would manage those risks in the event that those risks materialise. So one of the main ways we do that is through reserves. So for a number of those risks, we hold specific financial reserves in the event that that risk should materialise, that we have the financial firepower, if you like, to manage that risk. Obviously, the risks are quite varied. Some we've got quite a lot of control over, others less control in terms of how they impact. So you'll see all that information in the budget report. And obviously, that's something that external audit particularly focus on when they look at their value for money opinion. So a big part of the value for money opinion is looking at the council's financial resilience and whether the council has got both a financial position that is consistent with a going concern and is able to manage to continue to deliver statutory services at the same time that it's got appropriate arrangements in place to maintain that. So that's something that external audit will focus on, probably more so than internal audit in truth. So there's a whole myriad of stuff in there that certainly you can have a look at that sort of explains how that situation plays out in Milton Keynes. But at this moment in time, when the budget was set last week, the Section 25 statement gave assurance to members that the council's financial position on all of the different budgets I mentioned at this moment in time is sound, and there aren't any material concerns around that.
Okay, thank you for that full. And so just in terms of the audit plan itself then, it is in essence the same area. You're focusing in on the known areas. There are no inherently new risk areas based on this. I hadn't read this document beforehand that you've just referred to, so that's why the work program seems to be very familiar.
Yeah, I mean, the audit program that Jacinta and her team produce, you will see all the things in there you'd expect to see from a financial perspective that will get audited, revenues and benefits, which is obviously a really big area for the council, financial system, and all the things around debtors, creditors, all those sorts of normal areas you'd expect an audit program to cover over the course of a year. And sometimes that may change a bit, but a lot of those audits are looked at on an annual basis, particularly the high risk ones. And some will be audited on a slightly less frequently, depending on the materiality. But that's something that Jacinta will take a view on as part of her plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item? Jacinta, I just wanted to say I thought it was a really good paper. Having looked through the internal audit plan, I felt the priorities seemed to all be about right in terms of kind of the things that risks and kind of known areas that we know are kind of causing the council difficulty. So yeah, I thought it was a really good paper. If there's no other comments, we're being asked that in line with the global internal audit standards, the audit committee as the board reviews, provides feedback as necessary and approves the draft internal audit plan. So are we happy to approve the draft internal audit plan? Yeah, great, brilliant, thank you. Okay, on to our last item, which is the risk management update. And oh, Jacinta, you're doing this one as well. I'm sorry, like putting it all on you tonight. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This is going to be a really short paper. We have to sort of bring our risk management framework or work that is being done across the authority on risk management to committee for you to have that oversight that we are managing our risks properly. So what I've brought to committee today is really a desktop review really of the strategic risks, the outcome of which I've a nice colourful chart on page 129, I think, and what that's showing is compliance with sort of the requirement that registers are reviewed quarterly. There are no changes in terms of the registers that we're reporting on, and it also shows that risk owners have been reviewing their registers quite regularly, and that the risks are being managed as expected. Good controls generally, no red risks, which is good, given all that we've discussed here about councils struggling, and we have risk owners who've considered their risks and determined that even though the risks are amber, their assessment is that we can live with that risk, and so they've not necessarily put too many or felt they needed to take more actions because they're thinking that in the current climate we have to live with some risk. So overall, I think that's what that's showing is the strategic risks are being well managed. I would also just alert committee to the fact that a lot of work is going on at the moment to produce service risk registers. I think what happened probably 3 years ago, we as a council just looked at the top 3 service risks, but we're moving away from that and we're asking for full service risk registers to be produced, and that is it's in progress at the moment. And again, there's good engagement. Directors, heads of service are looking at the services and pulling the risk registers together. So hopefully by the time next time we might include some examples of service risk registers. But overall, again, I think as a council, risk management is taken seriously and people are actually managing the risks properly and demonstrating that they're doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Canham.
Yeah, one of the risks doesn't seem to have any controls against it.
Yes, Councillor, I apologise. I think it was my fault. I did not set the print area fully. So when it was printed, it only printed the top area. But I can assure you, there's 10 good controls listed on that register.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Jacinta, again, thank you so much for the paper. I'm really pleased to hear about the service service risk register. I think the more people that can kind of buy into the risk and that process and kind of is aware of the risks throughout the organisation is really helpful. So thank you for that. If there's no other, we're all very quiet tonight. If there's no other comments, are we happy to agree the recommendation, which is that we review and provide feedback on the updated amber scored risks on the register? Agreed? Okay, in that case, I think we've come to the end of tonight's business. So as I said at the top of the meeting, this is our last meeting of this financial year and this council year. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody. I certainly will not be here next year. I'm standing down in May, so I certainly will not be the chair of this committee. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, particularly my committee colleagues who have been incredibly helpful and asked some, just helped the committee to be a robust committee that's checked and sought assurance from officers. So thank you ever so much for that. And you've done it in a really professional way. And thank you to the officers for coming and answering all of our questions. And again, providing us with that assurance. It's been incredibly helpful. And to the team for organising, Alex now back, and then we had George before. So thank you ever so much to you guys for organising all of this. But I will now close the meeting, give you back some of your evening. So I'm closing the meeting at 8:05. And I hope you go and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Take care.